You're listening to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan. As always, joined in the studio by James, Alum, and Callum. How you going, guys?
Not bad.
We have an interesting discussion tonight. We're talking about Alex Garland's Civil War, the movie that's caused a bit of controversy online.
You might say a Civil War.
All right, Callum's just turn Callum's mic off.
You're
done, mate. You've been
mic's
warned.
off. He's been warned.
I haven't even started.
All right. Before we get into the civil chore,
Oh, damn.
let's lay some groundwork. Alex Garland is
Hang on. Should we say, if you don't like politics talk, don't listen to this episode?
Yeah, that's it.
'Cause
Trigger warning. We're
Yeah,
gonna
There
talk
are a
about
few fans of the show that don't like politics talk at all.
Yeah,
And that's
so don't
fine.
listen to this episode.
That's fine,
Yeah.
but this movie is
Also,
about politics,
this is-
but not about.
But
yeah.
also not
Yeah,
about. It's
yeah.
not about
and
nothing.
this movie seems to have a very polarizing opinions.
Yeah.
So you are free to disagree with us. Just know that you're wrong.
That's it. That's it. We'll fight about it in the comments.
Look, if you've heard about this movie and you've been keeping up to date with the critical reception online, you'll know that there's two camps. People, which we'll get into our views, but the general basis is either in this studio, we're not smart enough or analytical enough to fully understand the nuance that went into this film, or there's just a lot of copium going on online because Alex Garland's missed the game.
Well, yeah, the others, everyone's just patting themselves on the back, being like, "Oh man, what a good movie! What a great job! Oh yes, yes."
And okay, this it's
but
gonna
anyway,
be,
yes,
yeah,
please
it's going to be
continue,
a
Nathan.
lengthy discussion. But I feel like let's get into his background, I guess, in film first
Because it's relevant.
and he's a filmmaker that we struggle with a bit in the studio.
Well, I mean, this is the thing.
It's the Ryan Johnson thing,
This-
isn't it?
Yeah. So Alex Garland wrote 28 Days Later, Sunshine, Never Let Me Go, Dread, Ex Machina, which he also directed, Annihilation, which he also directed. All great films.
Bangers, yeah.
I have problems with Annihilation, but still good.
It's awesome.
All those others, classics.
yeah,
Like, oh my God. Like,
yeah,
so every time Alex Garland does a movie, it's like, oh, I'm in.
yeah.
So then he does Men, which came out in 2022, and we're like, cool, let's see it. And you can go and listen to our review of that. It didn't
impress us.
didn't impress us very much. And so now when his new movie Civil War's coming out,
James was on the fence a little bit.
yeah, we were kind of like, I don't know, is he going to redeem himself from the last effort? How is this,
Yeah, and then
especially in the current political climate, like how is a movie like this going to deal with not just what's happening in America, but what's happening all over the world?
But before the movie comes out, he didn't do the movie any favors.
Alex Garland.
Yeah, in the publicity media trail, when he's like, there's like sound bites where he's talking about both sides are as bad and stuff like that. And I was like, oh no, did a libertarian make a movie about politics? Because I don't know if that's such a great
we'll
idea.
get into that.
Did he do Devs?
Yes,
he
he
did,
did.
yes.
Yeah,
which
that's
was
also
awesome.
a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I enjoyed Dread by him.
Dread, yeah.
No, most of his movies are great.
Yeah, and the movies he wrote, all classics. The movies he wrote and directed, Ex Machina, awesome.
Yeah.
Annihilation, good. Men, no.
It's a slow dive.
And Civil War, bow bow.
Yes. Do we have a sound for that? I don't think we do at the moment.
I told you to put one on there.
Skill issue.
Did we?
I know.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I told you to put one on, but we haven't updated it in a long time. We always use the same sound
No,
bites.
we do.
Yeah, we have that
Close
one,
enough.
but not the bow bow. Yeah. It's still good. Yeah. Yeah, so Civil War, it's about a fictional
Set in the near future.
near future where America's political situation has gotten so bad that there's like a secessionist movement and there's an actual second civil war.
The only kind of mention to politics that's pretty overt in the movie is the fact that they didn't like the fact that the president has a third term. Right?
And also,
Yeah,
there's implications that he bombs his own people, but that's also in the context of a war going on as well.
So the movie's called Civil War. Like I just said, it's about this fictional civil war, which doesn't seem so far off of what could happen considering what's going on. But the movie, other than a couple of very small mentions, like you just said, it's not about the war at all,
Yeah.
and is not about the political situation at all, is not about the social situation, is not about anything, basically.
Yeah.
And so in terms of the, I won't call it science fiction, but I'll call it like speculative fiction
Yeah.
of, what would happen if America
Had a second
civil war now in the 2020s. It doesn't do anything to build that world or to take you into that world or to really explore any of those ideas.
One of the problems with this screenplay is that Alex Garland's been on the press tour and he's been adding to the world building in interviews. So he's been explaining things about the film in interviews.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Nathan before the show, I'm like, that's not how storytelling works. At least if you have a multimedia property, for example, like let's just say Star Wars, right? You have the books and the movies and the comics and the games or whatever. I don't like it then. I think all the relevant world building needs to be in the movie.
We talked
right?
about it, yeah.
But in a thing that's a standalone film, you can't then just go and add to your film in an interview by saying, oh, this is why. So the coalition between Texas and, is it Florida? California.
Texas and Florida would make more sense.
He explained that the reason the Civil War happened is because the president wanted a third term or whatever. And then, the explanation is that, because Texas and Florida are so extreme. California, I'm sorry. Are so extremely opposites on the political spectrum, it takes something severe to have them band together. And I'm like, that should have been in the film.
But so let's just say, if you know anything about the current state of politics in America, Texas and California, quite opposed. There's nuances to it, but they're on very different ends of the spectrum in terms of politics and how they deal with their citizens and whatever. So just having in the movie, there's a California-Texas alliance. That already
infers something.
It infers something that it's like, that doesn't seem like. And Alex Garland's rationale, which he's been saying in interviews and stuff, is that something so bad must happen for those two politically opposed, polarized states to come together. Now, that's fine, but he doesn't explore what that is. Yeah. Now, I think the rationale, again, is that there's this fascist president trying to destroy the Constitution and have a third term and take over the US. But this ignores the fact that Texas is willingly, in the real world, aiding and abetting this kind of fascistic behavior. And conducting in itself.
Am I right or wrong in that when there's a really strong wind, Texas also threatens to secede?
Exactly, right? So for Texas to secede and then California to be like, yes, us too, that doesn't make any sense.
So the defense that people are saying is that this film, Alex Garland, when making this film, did not want to reflect real world politics because he doesn't want to
ridiculous.
He doesn't want to beat people over the head with it, right? I mean, problem number one: if art is political in and of itself, you can't divorce a movie, especially from the politics in which it's created.
Yeah, especially a movie called Civil War about a second American Civil War, coming out at the time when American politics is so divided. Of course it's about current politics.
Sorry, go on.
In which a living ex-president famously tried to overthrow the government.
Yeah.
Who also probably would want a third term in government.
Well, has said he wanted to, yeah.
Problem number two is... oh, no, I've lost it.
That's okay.
That's all right. We'll get back to you.
So, I mean, like the fact that there's no politics in a movie that
ostensibly... I'm sorry. The other defense, issue number two, sorry, Nathan, it just came to me, is that people are saying that the really smart reading of this film is that it's a Rorschach test for your own politics. So when you watch it, Nick Offerman's president is clearly Biden, or he's clearly Putin, or he's clearly President Trump, or this and that.
Yeah.
And it's like you color in this world with your own politics. It's a reflection of how you view politics. But again, that's not what this movie is doing. That's copium, to use what the kids might say.
Yeah.
That's not what this film is trying to do.
Yeah.
I think for a movie like this, it's only an hour 40.
It needs to be longer.
They could have saved this movie by having an extra half an hour of world building and kind of that political discussion in the film.
Yeah.
Right? They present these war journalists as apolitical, neutral characters.
Yeah.
And to an extent, when they're taking photos, they should be. They capture events that are happening. That's fine. That is neutral. That is a neutral action. You're just recording an event.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they don't have to have feelings of right and wrong based on what's happening.
Yeah, and here's my big problem is Alex Garland seems to have stripped the movie of all politics and seems to refuse to answer any political questions definitively by playing it safe and treading in the middle. And he's made a movie where it's called Civil War. It's set during this fictional Civil War, but it's quote-unquote about the photojournalists documenting the war, and therefore he seems not to have been interested in delving into the political situation. So why make it about a fictional civil war and not a real one if it's just about the photojournalists?
You could easily turn this movie into something like Russia, Ukraine, and just set
could be any conflict in any era.
That's also true.
In any time with photojournalism.
Yeah, a good take.
But on top of that, so let's just say, okay, play devil's advocate, like it's a movie about war photojournalists.
Yeah.
And the political situation and the war doesn't really matter. It's just about these, the four main characters. It doesn't do a good job with that either. These characters are paper thin.
Oh, yeah.
You barely get to know them, or again, they don't have any real stance in terms of the war. They don't have any growth or feelings towards any.
They have no opinions.
Yeah, they're just people with cameras and.
Yeah, so the pro-Civil War arguments I've seen that talk about this say that Alex Garland made this movie because he wanted to make a film that was a love letter to war journalists without going to a third world country and making a film about... Because there's a million of those, but also some people find them denigrating about other countries if, the civilized white man goes to Asia to document crimes, that type of thing. So he was interested in making a movie set in America about war journalists.
Also, we should mention that Alex Garland is English.
Correct. Yeah, correct. The problem is with these characters, not only are they moving through this politically charged world without any politics themselves, the few political comments that we get are things like, I need to interview the president, and they'll say negative things about the president. Yeah. But it's literally 3 sentences, and then that's all you get.
Yeah, I think you can sort of guess that they're not fans, but also there's no real...
There's no sense of identity to these characters. Their identities are, I interview people, and I take pictures.
I hold the camera,
The problem is, even taking... not to get all arty-farty, university graduate discourse level here, I'm sorry. But the art of taking a photo is political. When you take a photo of someone dying or getting shot by an opposing sniper or whatever, there's a political message inherent in that because you're taking the photo from one side as opposed to the other.
I think Alex Garland wants to maybe explore that and make a movie about that, but he's failed utterly. Yeah.
Another problem is you have these characters moving through this dangerous world in the solace of their car, not surrounded by anyone else who could misconstrue their political opinions as enemy talk. Not one of them has anything in the whole film to say that's not about photography or whatever.
As they're driving across America during this war, trying to get to the White House to interview the president, I guess it's kind of a road movie in a way. It's these main 4 characters. It's again, they don't really explore or grow, develop these characters.
Understanding of the world.
Yeah, but also again, they don't really interact with anyone on a meaningful level. There are some tense scenes where they'll pull up and try to barter for gas, or they'll pull up and there's a soldier with a gun threatening them. Or
even
something
then, there's
like
no politics in any of these scenes.
But there's a scene where they go to a refugee camp, and they just stay away from everyone, have a drink, and then it cuts to the next scene. And I'm like, wouldn't they go in the crowd, talk to people, take photos, interview people? They're journalists.
Yeah. Especially the guy who wants to be an interviewer.
Yeah, and also not only does that fill in your world building of what's going on in this fictional... not so distant, not so out of the realm of possibility America, you get to do that. but also just on a human level, you get to learn about the characters. And
that's what I was going to say, is that these characters, these journalists, which is what they are the kind of like the most boring journalists I've seen on film. Because they don't engage with the world in any meaningful way, and they don't engage with each other in any meaningful way, aside from the occasional car driving.
I mean, honestly, they could have probably just been two characters: the young girl and Kirsten Dunst's like mentor character.
I think
so. Like, there's this thing in storytelling where a character is essentially a bundle of traits, and they interact with the world, representing those traits and how those traits affect other people and whatnot.
That's a good point. If you have a trait, but you don't get to interact with anyone, then you're just a cardboard figure.
Exactly. The issue, one of the big issues I have with this film is that these characters primarily exist as nothing more than a means to an end for Garland to have the characters, or camera in this case, get from one end of the film to the other. So there's like no real growth apart from the trauma they get inflicted on by the Civil War, which they don't talk about. Really?
No, yeah.
They just kind of suffer in silence throughout this whole film.
Yeah.
But not literally, but also they kind of do until they get to the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So there's
also no aftermath, so you can't really talk that's about PTSD. I guess the characters, the older characters are veterans of journalism, so have been to other war zones. So I guess they have PTSD.
One kind of sees flashbacks in a couple scenes.
Yeah, but
and has an episode at the end, towards the end, and another character has like a drinking problem. Basically.
Yeah, but it's so surface level and very vague, and they don't get to explore any of that. And again, playing devil's advocate, Alex Garland seems to have wanted to just make a movie about boots on the ground photojournalists in the middle of a war zone. So, he's stripped out any sort of world building or real sort of long dialogue or character building scenes. So then we get to the actual movie that we get, where it's like, okay, it's about these photojournalists and they're in the shit and they're, there's fire in the dirt. And technically, these scenes are well done.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking
film. The movie looks amazing. Yeah. The movie's well shot.
Yeah.
The production is nice. Stylistically, all of our problems with the script.
Yeah, stylistically, technically, it's pretty well done. But I think if you take away all that stuff that he's taken away, and it's just about these journalists photographing the war, it's a nothing movie. It's a collection of standalone scenes that are just kind of string along. The
closest we get to realization in this movie is there's a short scene where they're under cover from sniper fire, and there's two kind of forces battling it out at this kind of midway stop. And the soldier, they're trying to take photos and be involved. And a soldier looks at them and he says, I'm not going to repeat what he says verbatim, but he says, "Are you challenged?" Yeah. Right?
With a hard R.
With a hard R, right? He says, "Are you challenged?" Yeah. And I'm like, that's the closest we get to the movie having realization, being like, what are you doing? You're kind of I know you want to take photos, but you don't need to be right up in the kill shot.
Yeah, there is this element of they're adrenaline junkies, especially
they have a death wish almost.
Wagner Mora's character. But again, it's just very surface level. It's one or two, maybe one scene of
Yeah, it's kind of just do you need to be putting yourself in this much harm's way?
Yeah.
For this shot.
Yeah.
And that's a question the movie kind of asks.
Yeah, but it doesn't really. And I mean, the movie should have been maybe more about that. War is a drug, the whole Hurt Locker thing. It's just you want to go back in. When you're in normal society, it's boring and you get itchy for going back into combat, even not just for veterans, but for these photojournalists. But the movie, I didn't get the sense of that.
No. So to me, politically, it feels like a meditation on centrism. Because you have these characters, these war journalists, and I know technically the concept of the war journalist is someone who, like Nathan said, they document these terrible things. But I also feel like it's also kind of perverse in the sense that they capture people dying, but not very often do they intervene to try and help. You know what I mean? Especially when you get the flashbacks with Kirsten Dunst's character with people, and I know what can you do, right? But people being lit on fire, and she's just trying to get the perfect angle, and I'm like, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Again, I think that's what Alex Garland was going for.
That neutrality.
It's
Who am I to intervene?
Exactly, but also, like, should you just put down the camera and actually do something or whatever?
Well, apparently he loves apparently he admires photojournalists and watchers. So I'm like, maybe he thinks that it's like that unspoken good that we all rely on to like document these things. But like I said, I understand all of that in theory, but when you're watching it, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, and also, like I said, it could be about any conflict at any time around the world when photojournalism existed. The fact that it had to be a sort of fictional, speculative version of the United States, like, and then just there's no attempt to realize that world or connect it to the photojournalism aspect. And we're asking the questions of, like, you know, is it morally wrong, whatever, to, you know, if you're a photojournalist, you're taking the photos and you're not helping, whatever, even though you're not a soldier, you know, it's like, does the movie really delve into this?
No.
Or are we just bringing it to it? Also, this also makes the characters even less interesting because they're all very passive. Maybe,
because it'd be more interesting if they asked that question: how much should we intervene, if at all? Even if the ultimate answer was no, we're neutral. That's an interesting discussion for the young girl to have with Kirsten Dunst's 100%. Character. You know, what is our role?
If you're gonna have the new blood and the old blood sort of come together, have differences of opinion, different politics opinions, different social.
This movie could have gone deeper because they had 3 generations of.
Yes,
of course.
I think a great opportunity would have been when they stop at the first rest stop or gas stop, and the young girl's character, what's her name? Jessie sees something weird near the car wash and she wants to check it out. Turns out it's 2 men hanging that these gas station operators have, you know,
murdered
or are about to murder, torturing.
Yeah.
And she basically kind of, you know, gets quite, I guess, rattled from that experience. And that would have been a great opportunity for her to be like, no, we should have stopped them. We should have saved them. And then Kirsten Dunst explained, you want to be, you know, the press, you can't interfere. You can document, which we did. They took a photo. That's what Kirsten Dunst's character goes and does. But you can't interfere. And that's kind of, that kind of conflict would have been great to, as you said, like, show that
flesh out the characters and the politics of it all a bit more.
To play devil's advocate, like, they don't really spell it out. And they don't have to spell it out. And Alex Garland and defenders of this movie have been trying to defend it by saying, oh, I didn't want to spell things out. But, you know, just having one scene at the end where Kirsten Dunst does interfere does not make up for an hour and 45 minutes before of absolutely nothing.
Again, this could have been a 2.5-hour movie with a lot more.
Could have been a series. Could have been like
we don't. It's that growth and that kind of.
But again, if you're gonna make the quick kind of flashy kind of action movie version of this without all the politics, without all the character stuff, it's still not a very good version of that either. The action scenes are technically decent, but there's nothing that's incredible or worth really rewatching and sinking your teeth into. There's no big battle, like real big battle scenes. There's no. It's not as tense and exciting. As people are saying it is. It's quite. There's a couple of peaks on the heart monitor. You know,
adrenaline
like
monitor.
Yeah, but otherwise it's like pretty low.
And I found they also to be like loaded towards the back end of the film.
Yeah,
which makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, but some of probably the best films, like they start at a level and the whole time they're going up.
Yeah.
Whereas this like starts flat and then it's like a couple of
small
peaks
bumps
here and there, and then at the end maybe a couple bigger bumps, and then the end, and it's kind of like.
Yeah.
There's not this rising tension that people who like the film seem to be pointing towards.
The best moments of tension in this movie are definitely Jesse Plemons.
Yeah. Jesse Plemons, like...
he wasn't even supposed to be in the movie, but apparently the actor they got for that role dropped out or had to leave or something. Yeah, so Kirsten Dunst is like, my husband's free.
Yeah, perfect.
He's just like, yeah, okay.
And he
was the perfect...
He's the best part of the movie. I mean, but to be honest, he's the best part of the trailer.
He delivered a great Roland Todd in Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Alum, you're our Photoshop expert in the studio. Can we set up some memes with Jesse Plemons' character for the socials?
Yeah.
Oh, what kind of blank are you?
Yeah, that's it. What kind of Tuesday review listener?
What kind of chicken are you? Is going to be the first one.
Yeah, but that's another scene, right? Using that as an example, where we could have seen some more sort of more interesting politics or kind of subtle, nuanced distinction. Instead,
it's
this trailer, well, we can use some of the dialogue. This trailer, this moment's like gone all over the internet and the trailers and stuff. It's like, what kind of American are you?
Yeah.
And that's, again, almost to the line of how political the movie gets.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but it still doesn't say anything because never know what soldiers what side they're on, or
what he actually means. Again, the vagary could be interesting, and the vagary is what Alex Garland and the defenders of this film are sort of pointing towards as, it doesn't have to hold your hand. It's subtle. It doesn't have to tell you everything.
I tend to agree with that. Only when the content provides enough clues
context.
or context to actually figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
This doesn't.
Also,
this straight up doesn't.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to make a movie about an American Second Civil War in a time when American politics and politics around the world are heavily polarized, and you're going to make it so apolitical and vague that it's like, well, we don't know whose side that guy's on. We don't know how racist he is or what he actually means or this, that, and the other. Or we don't know who's fighting who what uniform belongs to who. And yet in the real world, like I said earlier with the California, Texas, it's like, we know who the bad guys are.
Yeah.
Stop pretending.
Yeah.
But he's doing this both sides are the same.
Because he doesn't want. I think it's because he didn't want to alienate anyone. He wanted to make a Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah. But he also seems like someone who's like an enlightened centrist. Like, he even said like, look, it's a movie about polarization, and isn't polarization bad? I'm like, there's a reason there's polarization. It's because one side are fascists trying to bring Nazism back.
Let's put it in a very. Let's put it in.
Like, we should be polarized.
Let's put it this
Let's
way.
not all be friends and let the Nazis do whatever they want. Let's be polarized.
Let's put it this way.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Let's put it this
100%.
way.
He's an insane person if he thinks we should stop being divided and all get along and let the fascists do what they want.
I guess it's easier when you have a bit of money. You know what I mean? Because things don't impact you as much as they would a poor person who genuinely feel the brunt of the ails of society.
You can look at this objectively too. Let's use California and Texas as an example. One of these states, I'm not going to name which, restricts a woman's bodily rights.
Yeah.
And the other one doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard to see one is right and one is wrong.
So if there's division,
although people argue morals differently, but in this studio we lean a certain way.
Yeah, but there's division, and just saying division is bad. It's like, no, we should be divided over these issues. These are important issues.
I think as far as Jesse Plemons' kind of character goes, this movie is a blank canvas to a lot of people, and they put on kind of what they feel is correct. They imprint themselves.
I have seen a lot of right-wing co-opting of it.
Yeah.
And the movie, they do this a couple of times in the movie, like they use the Antifa massacre. Again, that's so vague.
Yeah, what does that mean? What's your interpretation of that phrase? Was it Antifa who massacred people, or were people massacred?
I don't know. I don't think the movie knows or cares either.
Yeah,
I don't think
people massacred people first, and then they got massacred as a result.
Yeah. The Portland Maoists, whatever that means.
Yeah.
That's
they
a
drop
phrase.
all these labels
to
be like, we have communists and like everyone's equal.
Yeah.
They're all equally bad.
Yeah.
The problem I have is if anyone utters the phrase Portland Maoists, I already know what part of the political spectrum you belong to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Same with Antifa massacre. The fact that phrase is in the film, I know exactly how he feels politically.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to pretend to be a centrist because it's in the script. He said it.
Yeah.
He wrote it.
Antifa is an interesting concept because it's a word we use to describe a group of people, but that people as an organization that they get referred to doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's no card-carrying Antifa people out there.
Also, we talked about this after the movie. It's like, we live in a world where January 6th happened.
Yeah.
And, I mean, not to mention all the other crazy stuff. And not to mention that all this kind of crazy stuff happens around the world as well. But just to talk about America for a minute, like, January 6th happened, and it was clearly one side perpetrating it.
Yeah.
So you can't play this game of like
both sides of the same.
It's vague who's the enemy, and it's vague why they teamed up, and it's like, oh, and this president is so fascist that these two completely ideologically different states are going to team up, even though, like I said, one of them is clearly going to be in favor of that president.
Yeah. And I think going back to that Jesse Plemons scene that there's a lot of discourse about on the internet, and people say, you know, he's obviously this or he's obviously that. I think at the end of the day, he's more likely a rogue soldier. From what we can infer, people can imprint what they want in this movie, and they will. But my opinion, at least, is that he was going to kill them all anyway. He's not kind of 100%. Asking, what kind of American are you? He's just being intimidating. Yeah, then the lady Jessie falls into the pit of bodies, and there's like hundreds of bodies there. He wasn't going to let any of them live.
No. Yeah. So
I'm like, they can say what they want to, I think, support their message of the movie.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, at least in that scene, particularly, he didn't care.
It's the face of military evil, right? Because it happened. All nations across the world who have militaries. You get these people who go, like in Vietnam, for example, famously, squads of soldiers will just shoot up whole villages. Happened in the Middle East all the time. Happens in the Middle East now, today, you know, actively. And that's their first encounter with that in America. So it was the perfect opportunity for them to engage with this idea of evil or American violence, or like, you know what I mean? Jesse Plemons represents many things, one of them being this idea of the rogue soldier. But it was a perfect opportunity for them to say, okay, here's a man who's clearly on one side politically. Here's his dialogue. You know, like here's him trying to interact with these people, but they're all going to die anyway because he represents military, not violence, but it's like that raw force.
Again, because all the military factions in this movie are so vague.
Do we ever see anyone from the Florida Alliance?
Yeah, at the end.
Do we?
Were they Florida Alliance, or was it all California?
I assume they were all the California, Texas.
Yeah, I thought it was all the California, Texas. Yeah, but like,
I guess Plemons technically, maybe.
No,
we don't know what faction he is.
Who knows?
You know, we see that, and we see those guys wearing like Hawaiian shirts and stuff.
What about the dudes in the building? The gunfight.
That's what I'm saying.
They must be the Miami boys.
Is that the that's the Florida Alliance. Yeah. No, but like that's what I'm saying. Is it's so vague, and you don't get to see how they interact, how they formed, like...
Yeah, you don't get to see any of that connective tissue.
Yeah, like, you don't necessarily need a flashback to show how they you know, but there's no...
You know, you could use a radio broadcast while they're driving, right? You could have TVs, you could have even just dialogue, you could have posters, you could use set design. Again,
like we said, like, there's pretty much no... Other than the four main characters and some hairy situations they get into with, like... enemy combatants, there's no interactions with other people.
Like, as far as I'm concerned...
there's no just talking to people who are displaced from their home. This is another thing that drives me nuts about this movie. It completely discounts the fact that there is, a lot of minorities in America and around the world who are being persecuted. And if a fascistic government was to take over and a military and a war was to start, that these people would probably be the first to be targeted and are the first to being targeted now in the real world before any sort of large-scale conflict happens. So the fact that there's no hint at that either, like, it's just like racism, I guess, doesn't exist, and homophobia doesn't exist, and transphobia doesn't exist.
It's such a clean civil war, isn't it?
Also, and so speaking of clean, there is violence in this movie, and some of it is
fine,
effectively gory and upsetting. But there's nothing in this movie that makes you go, "Wow, isn't war the most awful thing ever?"
Yeah,
maybe the pit of bodies, but other than that, like I watched The Pianist. Me and Callum rewatched The Pianist like not too long ago. Like, I know that's the Holocaust. That's different. I mean, any war, like any.
I mean, you look at Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's not. It's about the war. It's about the Second World War, not directly about the Holocaust.
Just the war scenes are so graphic and so gritty and vicious and harrowing, and they haunt you, and you remember them forever. Whereas Civil War, it's like they're just action scenes, and a couple of people get shot occasionally. There's no civilian casualties in this movie, is there?
No.
Other than that pit.
They reference it.
Yeah.
But not like you don't
Like I said,
it.
it's such a clean
Yeah.
war.
Yeah.
Again, and that's like I was saying with like the homophobia, transphobia, the racism, like there would be people being round up in the streets. There are people calling for that now.
Yeah.
There are people trying to do that now. There has been lots of racial, like targeted attacks and homophobic, transphobic attacks in America and around the world. So if there was an actual armed conflict and a militia or army could just go into a place and pick out the people they wanted to, they would.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have to spell that out. You can show that and have the photojournalists going like, okay.
Because there's that element of war where it also enables people who are to kind of take action into their own hands, so to speak. People...
they use their own agendas.
Yeah, people also, members of, like, if Civil War happened, I guarantee you people got looting, rioting.
Yeah.
Like, people would form gangs.
Attacking minorities. Yeah, exactly.
minorities.
Especially, and then you've got the other aspect of it where in America you have, like, the access to firearms like you do, and you have like, armed militias, and you have doomsday preppers, and you have gangs. And
the movie doesn't address all of that.
The movie doesn't address that at all.
But the movie was written from an English perspective.
Yeah, but also every time someone asks Alex Garland about that sort of the gun situation, the gun control situation, he always pulls the whole centrist thing, like it's like, oh, many countries have problems, not just the ones with all the guns. Oh, the Civil War, you can start with a knife. It's like, shut up.
I know. So what the hilarious
You've put
thing,
no thought into Civil War about America, even though you've set the Civil War in America.
So the most hilarious thing about what you just said is that the closest we get is they go into that town, and there's like snipers on the rooftops of that town. But the hilarious thing is that whole town is completely politically neutral.
Yeah. And it's funny that the photojournalists who do nothing to intervene question the people being like, hey, don't you know there's a war on? Then they're like, oh, we stay out of that. And I'm like...
Much like Alex Garland.
Yeah, it's like, isn't Alex Garland just that lady behind the counter being like, oh, we just stay out of it? Yeah. Also, have the balls to pick a side. I'm sick of this enlightened centrist, like, oh, you can only be a smart and good person if you just refuse to pick a side. You're either on the right side or the wrong side.
And hypothetically, right, even if Alex Garland picked the wrong side, at least we'd still have an interesting narrative.
Yeah, at least I could say, okay, he had the balls to make a psycho right-wing, like, kill 'em all movie. I'd be like, okay, I don't agree, but
we might be sitting behind our microphones being like, what a powerful work of satire he made. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that's a... Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, but, like, at least then, just have the balls. Like, and stop playing in the middle and stop not trying to offend people.
Look, the act of neutrality itself is a political position. This movie occupies its own political position of nothingness.
Yeah, it's cowardice. Right. It's a movie about nothing.
We have to go to a very quick ad break. We'll be back with more insanity in the studio right after this. You're back on the Tuesday Review, talking all things Alex Garland's Civil War, not to be confused with Marvel's Civil War.
Now, Marvel's Civil War I enjoyed.
There's more politics in Marvel's Civil War.
Actually there is.
There's more politics in any Marvel movie.
Yeah, that's crazy.
All right, so Alan's been silent most of this episode while James and Callum rant on.
James and Callum been going crazy? No, look.
It's just upsetting.
All right, settle down,
Callum.
It's such a fertile film. We agree.
I'll shut up. Just turn my mic off.
The film definitely has tried to do a few things and done none of them to any reasonable standard, I think. Even like you said, if you just want to make a movie about photojournalists that kind of navigating a war zone and that kind of thing, it didn't really hit hard about that. Like, it was just more like a bit of a patting yourself on the back about, like, yes, we go to dangerous areas and we take photos about these things. So anyway, like, from my opinion, it does, again, everything poorly, discussing, photojournalists and their PTSD, because obviously they're usually photographing horrific things. But it just, again, it doesn't go anywhere with it. The young girl, what kind of lesson is she learning, Jesse? Is she learning that you need to stay neutral, you need to put aside your emotions, or is she, what's she going to learn?
Yeah.
Like, is she going to become the next cold photojournalist that'll go through anything to get her next shot? Is that what
That's what I assumed, but again, like, I just don't care. I don't think it's well told enough, and
I feel the character of Sammy, who they very clearly say he's too old at this point, to be in the field, to be, taking these photos or doing any of the journalism, but he wants to kind of come along for his last hurrah. And they're like, well, I don't think they give him a good last hurrah at all.
No, he does nothing the whole movie except one scene.
Yeah, and that's realistically got nothing to do with being a journalist.
Yeah.
It's like,
in fact, there's very little journalism in this movie.
There is little to no journalism. It's just, again, people patting themselves on the back for taking a photo of a guy getting shot here and there.
There should have, like, considering that Kirsten Dunst's character Lee and the young character Jesse, is it Kaylee Spenny?
Something like that.
Yeah. Like, they're the photojournalists, but then Wagner Moura's character Joel and Sammy, like, they're like the
writers.
Yeah. So, and like they do no writing or discussing of like how are we going to frame this or whatever.
They could have done this by having Sammy write as they're traveling, and then
I don't like narration, so I wouldn't go into that aspect.
No, not necessarily narration, but have him writing down, and when Sammy's arc in the movie is finished, have like a book published or something with like some kind of,
or Jesse reads it, and all it says is like
it's like more political opinions and like
either
kind of
or it's just like personal musings, like it's not even about like just something.
Like,
I don't know.
Like the refugee camp was such a great opportunity where like Sammy can get out of the car, start talking to people, be like, where are you from?
Yeah,
where are you going? What's your experience?
Yeah, the amount of displaced people that would happen if there was a civil war, like that would be crazy. Play with that a bit. But no, this movie doesn't do that.
Because it's like, you're a photojournalist, yes, but there's also the journalist part, damn it. Yeah. Do some journalizing.
Yeah. Also, from, like, obviously it's a civil war set in continental America. I'd also be interested in seeing some of the dynamics that go on in the border areas between Canada and Mexico.
I think they mentioned something that Alaska... They mentioned it. I can't remember exactly what, though. So, yeah.
I do appreciate that $300 American would get you just a sandwich.
And then just like 300
Canadian. It's like, actually it's Canadian. So it's like, that stuff's fun. I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of...
little bit of superinflation.
Yeah, like...
I feel you need that to actually properly convey, again, that this is a civil war. It shouldn't be business as usual.
Yeah, there are economic ramifications as well as...
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just...
It's a disappointing movie.
I think, like, the fact that it has... got us to heated about and got us to discuss it, and the fact that it has sort of this controversial kind of divided opinion online, at the very least
gets people talking.
It gets people talking.
So it's not money for A24, which is a bonus.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's doing well financially, but like it's a shame that it's a nothing movie about nothing, and it's up to us and other people to sort of just argue over it. Yeah. When the movie itself, if you cut out everything, all the stuff surrounding it, and you cut out, death of the author, Alex Garland doesn't exist, and you just watch the piece of art as itself, it's pretty meh.
Yeah. I think, and this is such a shame because, as I said before on Air or Fair, I can't remember, if you take all the dialogue out of the movie and we fix the dialogue, you have a good movie. The scenes are fine.
Technically, but it's like there's nothing. Like I said, it's just a string of scenes. Like there's no real connective or emotional.
But they could send the movie to us, and we could rewrite it and have a better film.
There's nothing redub it.
Redub it. Backstroke to the West, Civil War edition. Let's do it. We'll just redub it, make it better.
Again, what kind of anime fan?
Vagary can be great in a film.
Like, what kind of anime fan are you?
Shutter Island Vagary, amazing. It's a good time.
Well. We talked about when Men came out, and we were like, look, it's super vague and philosophical, whatever, about its message. And it's like, I'll admit, I don't really get exactly what it's trying to say. I can interpret it, but I don't know. But there are movies I don't get that are still entertaining and really well made. And even if I don't get it, watching it is still like...
entertaining.
Oh no! In terms of men, like still like, I don't really get what they're going for,
but you could just tell it didn't stick the landing.
Yeah, but I was like, is that? And Civil War is the same. Like, I think this is Alex Garland's.
Men's a weird one because it's like mid, and then right at the end he's like, I need something exciting, And he's like, and you get the end scene of men, and you're just like, oh, okay.
And it's
Yeah, but it goes crazy, and
Yeah,
I'm
it
like,
goes
okay,
crazy.
this is
Yeah.
cool, and I'm like still checking my watch, like.
Yeah, it's cool, but the ending's also like kind of just doesn't make sense. They did it just because, well, we need something weird to happen.
I mean, it makes there's some sort of metaphor there, like we talked
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it, but also like I don't care, and we get it.
Yeah.
Like okay,
Maybe the goal was to get a bunch of people pissed off, and so he succeded.
Maybe.
I like
That's a valid.
I wouldn't
I wouldn't make a movie with that.
I wouldn't be
You know what the
surprised
goal-
because every interview he's playing it so safe.
Yeah, the goal's to make money so he doesn't upset anyone, so you get as many bums in seats as possible.
And that's
because-
cowardice.
Yeah, but that means people in the South, for example, can go and see this movie because it's not going to offend them politically.
Yeah.
because they think Biden's the
Because they
villain.
identify with the Jesse
and
Plemons
then
character.
and then
Yeah.
people in Portland, you know, not the Maoists, the real Portlands.
Yeah.
Portlanders.
Well, there's a lot of neo Nazis in Portland as well,
Portlanders?
isn't there? There's like a whole like it's like the hipster area,
Oh,
but
the-
then
the
right
Tiki Torch
outside.
people.
Either way,
Anyway.
then the people in the blue states can go and watch it and say, "Oh, look, it's Trump! Haha, we're so smart and smug."
Yeah. No, but that's the thing. Like, yeah,
You know, like the shame is, I like this movie without like taking all the dialogue out.
On a
of it. I liked
technical-
on
Yeah.
a technical level and a scene by scene level. Like as you
the
said, all
scenes
the
are
scenes
mostly well
entertaining.
done. Yeah.
But
You
I
know
just-
who really succeeds
but-
in this movie? The military-industrial complex.
Yeah,
Have a great time.
Yeah.
yeah, they're the real
But-
enemy.
But also, but
they
al-
are. Yeah.
yeah, but also, like I said, like there's nothing in the movie that was like so wow that
Yep.
I was like, oh, this is really, horrific about war, or this is such a great action scene, or this is such an emotional character scene. Like, it's well done technically, stylish,
needed-
but it's
this movie
nothing exceptional.
This movie needed to have
Or
like,
memorable.
Cassie's character doing her own kind of Heart of Darkness, and just like
Jesse, yeah.
Jesse, like just realizing what a terrible profession this is as she goes on to
it gets
towards the
worse
Cold
and
War.
worse and worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it feels almost...
Also, I know it's a movie and you suspend your disbelief, and it doesn't have to be realistic or whatever. But the characters do make really dumb decisions almost every scene. It becomes
Yeah,
like
we
one of
mentioned
those
that before
horror
when
movies.
The guy said to her, "Are you challenged? Like, what are you doing here? Why?" Are
Yeah,
you?
but at least that's like, oh, they're trying to get the perfect shot,
Yeah.
and it's like, get out of here. But like, there are other scenes where it's like they just walk up to Jesse Plemons, even though he's
yeah,
got
because
a, like,
I've got a press vis on.
yeah.
The war doesn't affect me.
Yeah, and there's also
VIP passes.
They also
it's like
they
a
also
privilege.
they also
Yeah.
mention that the press are being persecuted in the movie, in the world of the movie, as they are in real life, and yet there's no attempt to portray that with the press being targeted specifically because they are press. Like, wouldn't it be more interesting if instead of in a traditional sense of them having the press uniforms with that say press, so that they're not targeted or whatever, that they actually have to go undercover and take that stuff off because, oh, these guys don't like journalists and they target us specifically, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the stakes go up from there.
In
you
any
know?
genuine conflict in the world, certain sides will immediately suppress the press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse the
The
word usage.
I mean, the fascist government in the movie.
So being picky here, I don't know whether it's intentional or not. Please comment or let us know if I'm wrong about this. So the loyalist states for the president,
Yeah.
and at the start of the movie, now he's anti-press. At the start of the movie, they're in New York, which according to the graphic you've shown is part of the loyalist state, and they say, oh, they shoot people on sight in in Washington, but I'm like, but you're also in a state controlled by the government, ma'am. Is it not equal, or is it?
Oh, that scene in New York. Yes. Also, yes.
Yes.
That he didn't think about any sort of.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm looking at a graphic here, and I'm
But-
like, well, if the loyalist states are not pro-press,
Yeah, he
I'm
didn't
gonna-
think about
that's
it
what
at
I was
all.
then
like,
why are
so-
you also
yeah,
having a
you're
press
assuming,
meet up?
You're assuming that thought went into the screenplay, which is your first
or
problem.
on what states
Or am I
were on
just
what side. I don't think he didn't think of that at all. He was just
he got the graphic here, and I'm like, the New York's loyalist state apparently.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
called
you're talking about how the loyalist states
So
are
there's
no
a
go for
hotel
press.
full of press that are just allowed to be there
Yeah.
and allowed to come and go
No, don't think-
through military checkpoints.
Yeah,
Don't
but
think about
apparently
it too
that's the
hard.
same military that also shoots press on sight.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not
just-
justifying it, but I'm assuming they're saying once you get to DC,
Yeah, but
there's
it's all
more of a
controlled by the same
There's
people.
more of a hard ban on press, I guess. Because
it's a hard brand in that area.
Look,
but even though
it's
you don't
dumb.
need to be in the area to
One
do
thing I want
But-
to mention before we wrap it up, because we're running out of
All
time.
right, I want to go back to the New York after you.
Oh, no, well...
Okay. That New York, the opening scenes in New York pissed me off because it's literally introducing all the journalist characters. They're all staying in this hotel. There's a war going on outside. You have the perfect opportunity to, one, introduce those Hong Kong journalists instead of them just coming out of nowhere. Maybe there was a deleted scene. Maybe they were introduced. But they just come out of nowhere. It's also a good way of introducing just other journalists, like even people who don't show up later in the movie, but just people like
have journalists from other
shit
political
talking,
sides,
jargon, inside baseball. Like, hey, where you going? You go. What's the camera? Hey. Like it's again. Like it's just these four characters. You don't get to see anything around. It's so weird. Like I feel like if this movie,
it's empty. Yeah.
If this movie was made in the 90s, there'd be like a whole bunch of like different people like coming in and out and being like, Philip Seymour Hoffman would rock up like with sunglasses and a big camera and be like, "Hey, where you guys going?" Like it would be this whole like. And there'd be like a guy smoking, and he's like, "You can't smoke in here." And he'd be like, "Shut up!" And
that's another thing.
Like,
I want to see
it'd
the
be
Michael
life.
Mann
It'd be
version
life
of
and
this film.
J.K. Simmons smoking.
Yeah, it'd be life and character.
You think there'd be more smoking in this movie? Like it's a civil war. People are getting
I
shot
think
every day.
what's his name does Wagner Joel. Yeah, he does, and it's like they smoke weed a couple times. But
Michael Mann's version of this film would have been amazing.
Yeah, but it's pissed me off that you could have done so much world building, character building at so many points in this movie, and it's just the most bare bones version. And even in the bare bones version, it's not the stripped down cool action movie version. It's just kind of a collection of scenes that are about nothing.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on all night, and smarter people than myself have said, explained why this movie doesn't work.
Explain it to us while we're wrong. Use plain words, please.
Yeah.
But
we watch film. We know analyze.
Yeah. I think it's also I don't know if I want to use the word shame, but it's like A24 really, they're going hard in the marketing. There's a lot of marketing for this, a lot of promo. They're like, this is like their first big IMAX release movie, even though it wasn't like an IMAX made for IMAX film.
I did appreciate the aspect ratio of this movie, technically.
It was also shot on these new cameras that are like these little tiny cameras that are just come in this little gimbal. And so it's part of this wave of like, you know, you don't have to have the most expensive IMAX camera to make a good looking
friend
movie.
of the show, Darcy Yule.
Yeah. So I mean that's interesting too. But
also,
yeah,
shout out to Darcy. He wanted to be on the show if we're talking about Man on Fire, but he missed
if we knew, we should, you know, he should come back on. We should do a actual Man on Fire review retrospective because we just mentioned it quickly. I
haven't seen it. I'll watch it.
We should. We will watch it. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like, and assumedly the movie had a pretty decent sized budget for an A24, even in A24 terms. Like I feel like it would be bigger than some other A24 movies.
Definitely.
So it's just a shame that it's.
Yeah, and before we wrap it up, I think it's a shame. So Alex Garland's intimated that he's quitting filmmaking. Apparently,
he
said he's going to take a break from directing. He doesn't really want to do it for a while.
Apparently he's like not feeling the passion anymore.
Yeah, he's going to focus on screenwriting,
which might be better for us.
I would say normally I would say, oh yeah, go back to screenwriting. He made so many movies, but now I'm looking at the IMDb. I'm like, most of these movies are more than 10 years old.
What I was going to say is
Well, I didn't hear that.
I said, who would have thought making shit films would reduce your passion?
or making movies without or making movies without any real balls, and then when people are like, hey, what the hell is this?
It's just such a shame that, like, you know, like the man who brought us such great films like Annihilation, like
Ex Machina,
like who wrote 28 Days Later,
like Devs.
Devs wasn't that long ago. That was awesome. And it's like now we've come to this.
Yeah, I don't know.
See, my other thing is going to be, there'll probably be complaints of like, well, you need to go watch the movie again. And I'm like, I can agree with that if you genuinely see some points to discuss, but I refuse to pay for it again.
Yeah, like I would have given it a lower rating on Letterboxd. I ended up giving it 2.5 just because technically I think it's decently well done enough that it's like I might one day in the future watch it again for the technical aspect.
Yeah.
But as a movie, like characters, dialogue, politics, social, any sort of trying to say something, any sort of emotional, I'll get nothing out of it.
We're out of time.
But yeah, it's not a good movie.
Yeah. You can skip it. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Actually, I'm going to take it down to 2 because I'm so mad at Alex Garland right now.
So leave it. We got to don't rage review. All right, let it cool off first.
No, I already did mine too.
Hey, yeah, I it's been long enough since I've seen the movie.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Please like and share the Tuesday Review Newsmask page, Facebook, Threads, and Instagram page, as well as the Twitter and Blue Sky page.
At Tuesday Review AU.
Also, please follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yes. And follow us on Letterboxd. I am channeldrifter.
I am Nathan B_90. Alam is Alam20.
Yep.
And I'm Come Tuesday.
We'll be back next week. Adios, cousins.